Your Oracle HCM system is full of sensitive and confidential information about your employees. Typically, that confidential data will end up in your non-production instances when you refresh your environments, meaning people working in those non-production environments may be able to access all that real-world information. Instead of heavily controlling security access or creating dummy data, Epicenter's Data Scrambling as a Service automatically scrambles employee details, replacing it with realistic alternatives, data that looks real but isn't identifiable. Our service lets you scramble every data point, not just personal identifiable info. And you can use our pre-configured set of scrambling rules or define your own. This service is available on demand through a pay-as-you-scramble subscription model and can be scheduled as part of your regular environment refresh. Get in touch to find out more.
Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedules to join Epicenter in our webinar. And I really hope you enjoyed that little animation video that we have on our new offering, Data Scrambling. I'm Jacinda, and I'm a sales and marketing consultant in Epicenter, and I will be moderating this webinar. Today, we'll be sharing how Epicenter can help you scramble your data within your non-production environment in a cost-efficient and fuss-free manner. I'm very happy to introduce David Doherty, Senior Sales Director at Epicenter, who has extensive experience in the area of HR transformation and HR technology. Before we begin, I'd just like to take a moment to explain a few things on how this session will be held. Firstly, we will be recording this webinar, and a link to the recording will be sent to you after this webinar for future reference. Please do feel free to share it within your network and with your colleagues who may also be interested in this topic and who couldn't join us today. All audio and video functions for participants are locked, so please, if you have any questions, use the Q&A functionality down below in Zoom to jot down your queries, and we will cover all questions at the end of the presentation. David will be sharing his screen, as you can see, and has prepared a few more slides in support of his presentation. If you are on a mobile device, you can easily zoom in to view the slides in more details. The duration of this webinar is approximately 20 minutes, followed by a brief Q&A. With that, I will now hand over the time to David. David, you're on mute.
There we go. Thank you, Jacinda. There you go. So I muted myself and also muted the audio on the video at the start, so apologies for that. But thank you everybody for joining. So I'd just like to extend my own personal welcome to you all. I'm absolutely delighted to be here today to host this webinar. I promise this will be a valuable session. I think I've probably got about 15 to 20 minutes of talking time, so we'll allow some questions at the end and we'll aim to wrap up around about the halfway through the hour. So to introduce myself, my name is David Doherty. I'm based in London and it's a beautiful sunny day here today. I have a 16-year background now in HR technology, which is quite a scary number when I write that down, 8 of which have been focused on Oracle HCM Cloud. So I've been working with this product from the last 8 years. This short animated video we kicked off with, that certainly gives a good teaser for what I'll cover today. And this is a topic that has had a personal interest and a personal frustration for me in the past in some of the projects I've worked on. And so myself and also the entire team here at Epicenter were very excited to bring this solution to you today. So with that, we will move along. Yeah, so the fact that we're so excited about this, we actually have 2 webinars on this topic. So the first one of those webinars is today, and this is going to focus on the challenge of data scrambling. Then I'm going to give an overview of the Epicenter solution, and of course, I'm going to talk to you about the accompanying benefits of it. The second webinar, now this is going to take place 3 weeks from today. So that is on the 23rd of June, 2021. It's going to be at the same time. And we will share the topics for this and the registration link towards the end of the session. But clearly, as if you're attending this, data scrambling means something to all of you. So if you like what you'll see today, then I really recommend signing up for that. And we'll go into much more detail on the solution itself, proper deep dive. So before I get to that main topic, I'm aware that some people attending today may not be 100% familiar with Epicenter and what we do. So perhaps you saw this on LinkedIn and were curious. So for all of you, I just want to give a short introduction to who we are at Epicenter. Now at Epicenter, we're all about data. We live and breathe your HR data, and everything we do is geared towards helping you manage that HR data and extract the maximum value from it. So what does that mean in practice? Well, in practice, it means we have a suite of interconnected solutions that are all related to data. So the Epicenter data journey started with integrations, but that has extended as time has evolved to become a more all-encompassing suite of HR data management services. And those service offerings can be broken down into the categories you see before you on screen. And everything we do, each of these 5 offerings can break down and be incorporated into 2 key elements. And I want you to remember this because I'll come back to this later on in the session, but everything involves a next generation, unique market-leading technology. And then we couple that technology with an end-to-end service that can basically remove that burden and allow you as an HR function to focus on doing what you do best. So very quickly, before I go into the detail of data scrambling, I will just take you on a quick tour around the wheel, just so you know everything that we do. So data scrambling, focus today, and I'm going to come back full circle to here shortly. Outbound and inbound integration. So we specialize in creating integrations between Oracle and third-party systems. So that can be ERPs, it can be payrolls, talent systems, time, finance systems, anything connected that needs your HR data. For that, we utilize native Oracle integration methods, and that's also supported by our own technology as well. As part of this, we also offer full support and maintenance under a pay-as-you-integrate subscription model, where you pay just for the integrations that you use. Now, most interfaces we build are actually reusable. So where this is the case, an interface goes into what we call our pre-configured interface library, which has more than 85 systems, and you can find that on our website at www.epicenter.eu. But these interfaces can be up to 90% reusable, and as a result, they're proven, very quick to implement, and these are also offered on a subscription basis. This can be at a very low implementation cost, and then a subscription fee for the ongoing service. Now, the cousin of inbound integration is data migration. Because what is data migration if not sort of a one-time inbound integration mechanism? So we've extended our integration technology to manage this. And our technology helps to automate and accelerate various parts of the data migration process. We've got built-in validation to validate that data prior to loading, and we've got pre-built Oracle loader templates. Reusability is the heart of this, and we can reuse the mapping we produce for data migration for integrations later on. So for example, if you're transitioning from a local payroll system or local HR system today, we can do the mapping to migrate that data and reuse that mapping to integrate back down to that payroll system once you've transitioned over to Oracle HCM. So everything very much related here. And that relation carries on with data realignment. So if we take our example of the legacy payroll and Oracle HCM, these are 2 systems that share many of the same data points. But these can become misaligned, which can happen for many reasons. And we can reuse the same data mapping and the same functionality we have to compare data between the 2 systems. This is ideal for testing integrations and also for managing your ongoing data quality and production. But that's all very nice, but it's not what we're here to talk about today. We are here to talk about today, coming back around full circle to data scrambling. As Jacinda said at the top, this is a new offering, and we're really excited about this and the possibilities it can open up for Oracle HCM Cloud customers, which I think will include many of you on the call today. So with that, the first topic is going to be the data scrambling challenge. Now, I could talk for a long time about why data scrambling is important. However, you're all busy people. I don't want to take up too much of your day. And if you're here today, I think you already understand why data scrambling is important. So it's not something I need to cover in any great detail. Suffice to say, as the video at the start of this webinar told us, you have a lot of sensitive data in your HR system about your employees. And as a result, in your non-production environments, it is incredibly beneficial for you to be able to protect that data. However, whilst we know that data scrambling is an important requirement for Oracle HCM customers, particularly in a post-GDPR world where data privacy is a bigger conversation topic than ever before, we see a gap between this requirement and the viability of the available solutions. And in fact, in our experience of implementing Oracle HCM Cloud, we've seen all sorts of different ways of doing this. So for example, I've got a few examples to pop up on the screen here. So the first and obvious one is the Oracle Data Scrambling license. Now, this is an optional part of the Oracle HCM product. Some of you out there may already have this in your license, but this works great. It works fantastically, and it works for PII. So any personally identifiable information, that's going to work really well. And while that meets many requirements, it's not always sufficient for what the customer wants, because in some cases, there are other ways to identify those employees, and you can still see certain sensitive information such as salaries, performance ratings, etc. So many companies then try to explore other options. And the first one of those is a custom scrambling program. So we're aware of some Oracle HCM customers that spend quite a lot of time and quite a lot of money, frankly, as well, developing their own custom scrambling routines. This takes a long time to implement, and even beyond that, it's inefficient, requires maintenance, etc., etc. It's a lot of solution, it's a large financial outlay, and we think there are other ways of doing this. Another alternative that companies do is a more manual one. Now, this is because for most companies, going down that custom scrambling route is probably too expensive, takes too much time, it's too complex. So the other way of doing this is to manually work to extract data, scramble it, perhaps via a complex Excel or via some manual work on another database, and then manually reloading that data again. Now, this is quite inefficient. It's not very repeatable. It can lead to a lot of downtime in non-production environments following a refresh. And so when you're repeating this on a regular basis, for example, at the time of your quarterly upgrades and a refresh process, this can be a cumbersome process. And also don't forget that you have a lot of eyes on the data when you're doing it manually, potentially spreadsheets lying around. So from a security perspective, this also is not ideal. But the last option is perhaps even less ideal, and that's the do nothing option. Now, this is what a lot of companies do. And there may be some of you that see yourself in this particular mirror. It's not a judgment, it's just a result of the situation and the solutions available. And I can understand the reluctance to go down that route. Now, it doesn't mean that you actually do nothing, because what ends up happening here is that you may end up controlling security very heavily in your non-production environments. So treating security in the same way as you would with production. Potentially you're loading dummy data into a blank environment. This can be a laborious process, and the data that gets provided by that process can be insufficient. It might be very basic, very limited set of data, might not be sufficient for all of the testing and everything else that you would want to do. But in some cases, we literally have seen the case where it's accepted that people will have access to confidential information, and these people do not need to access it to perform their jobs. So they may end up signing NDAs, etc., but it's still not aligned to best security practices, principles of GDPR, etc. So here at Epicenter, this was not really a situation that we were happy to accept. So we already have the software, the capability that manages complex integrations, data migration, transforming data, loading it into Oracle HCM Cloud. So the platform was there, and the logical answer was for us to do something about it. And this is the end result, and it's something we're very proud of. Now, the process is quite simple. So we use our starting point, Oracle HCM Cloud itself, and then we have Epicenter Data Scrambling tool. And the process is pretty simple. So we start in Oracle HCM Cloud with a source environment of the data. So this would typically be your production environment, especially in run mode, but there are cases it could also be a non-production instance as well. So for example, if you have a data migration environment where you have all of your fresh migrated data during a project lifecycle, this could also be used as the source. But typically, especially when you're in run mode, long-term solution would be using production for this. So we're able to extract this data from Oracle HCM Cloud, and then we apply a set of scrambling rules to it. I'll come a little bit to how we handle those scrambling rules a bit later on. But these can be a combination of either our predefined rules that take care of the majority of standard requirements. So we've already done this. We already have predefined rules, for example, for name, for address, performance rating, job, various data points, and you can take these and you can just go and apply them to your environment. We may also require some more bespoke ones designed for you. Now, this is where it comes in the realms of complex validation logic, for example. So if you have a lot of heavily defined salary ranges, let's say, or perhaps even scrambling flex fields. Obviously, these ones have to be bespoke. But the key point here is that this is a very flexible and configurable solution. You can apply things out the box, but also adapt it to your specific needs. And after that, we then can generate the Oracle scrambled data files for upload. So these are the standard Oracle HDL files. We generate those with your scrambled data, and then this is all automated in our software, and then we're able to load those into the target instance of Oracle HCM. And the end result is you have your Oracle HCM target instance, your test environment, your training environment, and that can be used freely by developers, by testers, by trainers, without having to worry about data security. As we said at the top in the video, the objective here is that it's realistic data, but it's very much not identifiable. So that's the process. Now, what are the benefits for this? The first benefit is that it scrambles any Oracle HCM data point that you store about your employees. And that, as I just mentioned, also can include flex fields. The second benefit is that most templates you can reuse. So we already have these predefined, we have a library of predefined templates. Some rules, as I said, might need to be bespoke. We can help you to design and create your own, but we have a very, very solid baseline that will meet the minimum requirements you have for scrambling without any further intervention. The end result of what we produce is realistic data, and this is very important for your testing. We're not hiding data here. There's no need to just zero out everybody's salary. We're not all giving everybody the exact same salary amount, for example. Data can be realistic following the configuration rules that you have in place in your Oracle HCM setup. So, for example, let's take the organization tree. Do you have departments linked to a certain business unit? The other example I just gave of salary ranges linked to grades, for example. None of those are a problem. It's all possible. Now, the main objective here is, other than having realistic and non-identifiable data, is to make this automated and repeatable, both in project mode and as a long-term solution. So while there might be a little bit of setup, once you're into the run mode, this becomes repeatable and you can wave goodbye to complex, time-consuming manual processes. It's not going to take you months and heavy investment to get it to build a complex solution for yourself. You will no longer need to have long downtime after refreshes where you scramble the data. You'll not need to be resetting the security access all the time or really heavily controlling that. And even better, we can also provide the files for upload to multiple environments following a refresh. So if you want to reset scrambled data in all of your non-production environments, we can do that all as part of the same process. And finally, and most importantly, it's 100% secure. So all the data always resides on the Oracle Cloud infrastructure. It will never leave the Oracle domain. So it's in your Oracle HCM Cloud environment, it's in our software, everything sits on the Oracle infrastructure. Data is encrypted every step of the way from where it's extracted and loaded. So that meets all standard encryption practices. We eliminate spreadsheets sitting on hard drives or emailed copies of data flying around your organization. It limits the eyes on the data because this is an automated process. It's not something where somebody has to take the data and do something manual with it. Also, any data files that are created along the way are purged. So we have standard purging requirements, but again, these are flexible if you have different requirements to what our standards are. So really for us, this is ticking the boxes that currently aren't ticked, and it does it in a way that is repeatable, can be applied to anybody, and is therefore much quicker and cheaper. Now we've talked about the solution. So I want to talk about the second aspect, which is the service. If you remember, I said earlier that all of our offerings incorporate technology and then a service aspect. So this data scrambling as a service can be scheduled or requested at any time via our support desk. Now, this is an on-demand service, and typically we think there will be two main use cases for this. The first is as part of an environment refresh. This we think will be the most common use case. So as Oracle HCM customers, you may well have a quarterly upgrade. Well, you will have a quarterly upgrade process. As part of that, it's very likely that you are doing environment refreshes to keep all your environments in sync with all the latest functionality and up to date with the production level of configuration. Now, we can schedule this to follow your Oracle refresh, and it can also happen on an ad hoc basis. So, for example, during project mode, if we want to scramble data in a test instance, or if you want to do something outside of your regular environment refresh process. At all times, this is available on a pay-as-you-scramble basis, which means you only pay when you scramble data. There is no cost just to buy the product. You only pay when you are scrambling data. So how do you get on board? How do you get on board the data migration train? Well, allow me to take you through some of these steps. So the first step we do is the setup or the initialization. Now, this is a one-time exercise to get you started. And in the first instance, we need to define those scrambling templates. So we use our pre-configured rules as a starting point and identify which of those will be used. And then we work with you to identify any gaps, for example, flex fields, complex rules that I mentioned before. We then go ahead and apply those templates. So that's enabling those in-scope predefined rules and performing any configuration for the rest. And then, of course, we follow this by testing to make sure everything works as expected. Then after that initial setup, we move to execute, and it becomes that repeatable service that I've described previously during this session. It really can be that simple. So to preempt the inevitable question, what does this cost? Well, as I mentioned, this is on a pay-as-you-scramble basis, and the cost really is based on a tiered pricing model. So it depends on the number and complexity of the templates and rules applied. But the objective, of course, is to have a very efficient and cost-effective long-term solution. So if you are using our out-of-the-box templates, we can be up and running in a matter of days for as little as a €5,000 fixed setup fee. And then after that, a fee of as little as €2,000 each time you run that scrambling process. So let's say you scramble on a quarterly basis, that's potentially just €8,000 per year to secure your data, remove the headache of having production data in your environment. And that's all with a proven repeatable process. Now, as you can probably tell, it's certainly something I'm excited about. It's something we're all really excited about here at Epicenter. And I hope you are too. That's the end of this very short presentation. And as a result, I'd now like to open the floor for any questions. So as Jacinda mentioned at the top of the call, you can put your questions into the question and answer box. And I will pick them up from there. So please, if you have any questions at this stage, then do raise them. Okay, all right. So we've got a few questions come in, so I will take some of those now. Okay, so the first one I will take is this one. So is there a data security risk associated to extracting data and scrambling in your software? So firstly, all data, as I said, is hosted in the Oracle Cloud infrastructure. Data is encrypted at every stage of the journey, and it was inaccessible to any unauthorized person. So I think I probably answered that during the session, but absolutely, everything is very secure, and that's our top priority. I have a question. We can achieve this using inbound also, right? I think what you mean is from inbound data sources. So what I've really showed today is the process where we take data from Oracle HCM and scramble that data. But yes, absolutely, we can also scramble data from another source system on the way into Oracle HCM Cloud. So absolutely, thank you for that question. Can we get the count of data that got scrambled or any form of reconciliation? Yeah, there's always ways of reporting out that data. So you can report that out of Oracle itself, of course, once that data is loaded. And any form of reconciliation, I'm not quite sure what you mean by that, but I think if you mean the errors, I think, yeah, we can certainly give the volume of data that's been scrambled and that we're importing. If you scramble the date of birth, it might impact the pension auto enrollment. How do we take care of this? So yeah, if you have pension auto enrollment, if it's based on DOB, I think there's a couple of ways of doing that. I mean, firstly, if you're scrambling everything else, Potentially you may not need to scramble the date of birth if it's really important to this, but also the pension auto enrollment will still work based on the dates of birth that we have, right? So we can set a rule to keep the same year, for example, if you want to keep it realistic, and just scramble the day and month. That's possible. We can also if it's scrambled data, then no one is identifiable. So any random date of birth, it's still going to work with the pension auto enrollment. You might just have different volumes of people being enrolled based on their date of birth if you don't have the same number of people reaching that subscription age. Another one, sorry, I missed the initial part. How is it different from Oracle Data Masking Service? It's a good question. So with the Oracle Data Masking Service, that's restricted to PII, so personally identifiable information. So we're talking things like name, national ID, driving license, passport. For us, we can scramble any data point in your Oracle HCM database. So that means we can also scramble things like salary, things like performance ratings, things like assignment data, etc. Basically, almost any data point, or pretty much any data point that you can store for your employees. Another question: does it scramble payroll calculated data with the same payroll calculation rules and formulas as done by HCM system? So how we would really do that is to scramble the source data that is used for those payroll calculation rules. So we scramble the data, the core data that's stored about the employees, and we let the payroll calculation rules do their thing. Now, obviously, when you're changing things like marital status, if you're changing salaries, if you're changing tax information, whatever it is you're storing for those people, that's going to impact those payroll calculation. But we don't change the rules. Those payroll calculation rules and formulas would stay the same. And you just use the data set you have as being the reference point for that. Another one, we have organizational data tables. We can scramble those. We recommend not to, mostly because we like the data to be realistic. But also there's a very good technical point around that as well, which is that relationships between those referential data points in your data model mean that it's not a great idea to scramble those. And typically, things like departments, business units, locations, they're not particularly sensitive information, at least not the referential part. Okay, we're beyond the hour, the half hour even. And I think I answered all the questions that have come in. Just checking here, just checking the chat as well. There's one more. Does the platform store any data within it? Yeah, so as I said before, all the data is stored on the Oracle Cloud infrastructure, and any data files that are created as part of the data scrambling process are then purged afterwards as well. So it's only stored during the process, and then after that is eliminated. But any data that is stored never leaves the Oracle domain. That's one of the most important parts in terms of the data security, because everything is on the same Oracle Cloud infrastructure platform, the same as your Oracle HCM system is. All right, I think I covered all the questions. So thank you, everybody. I just want to leave you with one thing, which is the reminder. Oh, I have one more question come in. Go on, I'll answer that one as well. What's the process for document of record? PDFs like payslip. Yeah, okay. So this is a good question. So for document of record, I think we can take that on a requirement by requirement basis, but we can either sort of replace it, or we can actually remove those documents. So we can remove them and not load them back. So then that you don't have documents that then will identify who you are, because obviously we can't scramble a PDF document. So we'd have to just make sure those were eliminated. But thank you for the question. All right, for those if they have any more questions, then we can cover them in the next session. And that next session, as a reminder, is 3 weeks from now, 23rd of June, same time slot. And that's going to include the following topics. So we've got security, we've got the detailed process. We're going to go into more detail on the extraction and load, how we take the data out, how we put the data back in. We'll also cover some of our standard templates. So what kind of data templates do we already have to use? And then lastly, we're also going to cover your involvement. So as a Oracle HCM Cloud customer, if this is something that you really want and need, then we will be able to tell you about what we need from your side to be able to do this. So we're going to put the registration link in the chat as well. Jacinda, I think you were going to add that if we have it.
I will drop it in.
So I'd recommend to go click on that and sign up right now to learn more about this solution. You know, as I said, we're all very excited about this, and we hope that this has raised sufficient interest with you, and this is something that you think can add value to you. If you do, then please do not hesitate to get in touch. If you have any further questions that occur to you after this session, feel free to contact me directly. My email address is right there on the screen. You can also connect with Epicenter and myself on LinkedIn, either to contact us and ask us a question, or just keep up to date with everything going on here at Epicenter Towers. So for me, that's all that's to be said. So thank you to everybody for attending. I look forward to speaking to you again soon. And Jacinda, I'll hand over to you to close.
Yep. Thank you everyone again for your precious time today. Like David said, I've dropped the registration link for the second webinar in the chat. So if you just follow that link, drop in your details, you will receive a confirmation email and a reminder for when the next webinar is happening. So thank you so much again, and I hope you guys have a great day ahead.